What if I told you there's a 19-year-old that spent the past 3 years following Bryan Johnson's famous $2 million a year anti-aging protocol? Sounds kind of unbelievable, right? Well, countless people have tried Bryan's protocol and documented it online for a few weeks or even a few months. Very few have stuck with it for the long term. Most people I've talked to that have tried Blueprint see it as a challenging experiment or something to test their limits. But here's where things get interesting. Back in February of 2021, Bryan's son Talmage decided to take on this challenge in a way that no one really has. He went all in on the Blueprint protocol and never looked back.
I saw everything he was doing. So I saw all the anti-aging therapies. I saw the extensive protocols that he was doing, and I'd always been so fascinated by it. And so I looked into it more, and I decided that I was going to follow the same path. Still to this day, even though it was a hard transition, I don't look back at it at all. Like, no regrets.
Now at just 19 years old, Talmage has spent the past 3 years meticulously following this routine and adapting it to his own needs. In this video, we're going to dive deep into Talmage's unique adaptation of Blueprint. We'll explore the differences between his version of the protocol and his father's version of the protocol, especially when it comes to exercise and diet. Quick note, I think the diet part of this video is especially interesting if you're a younger person that's been considering trying Bryan Johnson's Blueprint routine, but you're worried about not being able to gain muscle on it, then I think this adaptation could be for you. What sets Talmage apart in the world of longevity or biohacking is how young he got into it. In my experience, most people don't become interested in longevity until they have a few health scares. But Talmage began taking this stuff seriously at just 16 years old, which gives him a huge advantage. By starting young, he doesn't have to focus on undoing years of aging damage like most people do. Instead, he can put his energy into leveling up his health and performance right from the start.
Oftentimes, people think Blueprint is about doing all of these extreme anti-aging therapies and trying to slow your speed of aging to the max. But really, it's just about stopping bad habits.
On the other hand, his father, Bryan Johnson, has a slightly different focus. One of Bryan's big goals with Blueprint has been to reverse aging damage.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that my dad does for the Blueprint protocol is purposed to reverse aging damage that he's accumulated from years of unhealthy habits, poor eating, excessive UV damage, and just wrecking his body from years of sleep deprivation.
After years of work building Braintree Venmo, battling a decade of chronic depression, and living off an unhealthy diet, Bryan found himself in a rough place. But Talmage, having started Blueprint at 16, doesn't have much aging damage to reverse.
I haven't accumulated as much aging damage, and so there are less things to reverse out. So a lot of the therapies that he does, even if I try them, they would probably be ineffective because there's nothing to fix. That pretty much leaves me with just the basics of diet, sleep, and exercise. The first step for me was stopping self-destructive behaviors. The second step was mastering diet, sleep, and exercise. And as I get older and maybe something's become more relevant, then I'll do that. But for the time being, it's just diet, sleep, exercise.
Over the past year, I've spent countless hours diving deep into the science of longevity, and I've noticed a clear pattern. If you want to live a long and healthy life, there are 3 core areas or power laws to focus on. Those are diet, sleep, and exercise. Now, they might not be as exciting as things like red light therapy, sauna, cold plunge, or the latest supplement, but their impact is profound. Speaking of exploring and learning new ideas, I'm excited to share a resource that's been a game changer for me. Shortform. Shortform is an amazing tool for anybody that loves nonfiction. They create the world's best guides to nonfiction books, offering summaries that go far beyond the basics. These summaries cover all of the key ideas, provide insightful analysis, and even include interactive exercises that help you retain the material better. Just recently, I used Shortform to read a summary of Tom Brady's book, The TB12 Method. The summary helped me realize that this would be a great book to explore on this channel, so I went ahead and ordered it, and I now plan to dive deeper into the text. I'm thrilled to be partnering with Shortform, and I think you'll love it too. They're offering a free trial and 20% off your subscription if you want to check it out. Just go to shortform.com/projectandrew or click the link in the description. Now let's get back to the video. So the first core component to Talmage's version of Blueprint is his exercise protocol. When designing any exercise routine, it's really important to ask this question: what are we training for? For Talmage right now, it seems to be about building muscle and enhancing longevity. With these goals in mind, Talmage's training protocol is structured around 3 elements: lifting, cardio, and stretching. Let's start out with lifting. For those trying to gain mass, the advice is typically pretty simple: lift heavy weights and eat lots of food. Talmage is doing both, and his lifting routine is pretty structured. He follows a relatively straightforward 6-day push-pull legs routine, and it seems like he's aiming for 4 sets of 10 reps on pretty much every exercise. As with pretty much everything in exercise and longevity, there's some debate around this, but that 6 to 12 rep range is known to be ideal for hypertrophy or building muscle, so that's probably why he's shooting for that rep range on most of his exercises. So a lot of the exercises in his plan are pretty standard, but a few of them are a little bit more advanced and difficult to do. Take, for instance, Nordics and reverse Nordics.
My son introduced me to these exercises.
These movements can be pretty tough to master. I spent a lot of time last year working on reverse Nordics in particular, and I found that they really helped strengthen my knees. Next, let's move on to the cardio component of his training plan. Talmage is using a cardio training method known to boost VO2 max. Now, if you haven't heard of VO2 max, it's a key biomarker for cardio fitness, and it's a really good predictor for longevity. Right now, he's following a method that was made really popular by Dr. Peter Attia. Now, Peter Attia didn't come up with this method, but from what I've seen, he did popularize it. Here's how it works. Twice a week, Talmage does what's known as a Norwegian 4x4. He told me that he's doing these on either a stationary bike or an elliptical. So essentially what he'll do is he'll go as fast as he can, or he'll pedal as hard as he can for 4 minutes, pushing his heart rate up into upper zone 4 and maybe mid zone 5. And then as soon as that 4 minutes is up, he'll go into a 4-minute cooldown period. And then you repeat this cycle a total of 4 times. Talmage also explained that he generally pairs these 4x4 days with leg days. Then on upper body days, or the other 4 days of the week that he trains, he'll do zone 2 training. I believe he also does this on a bike or elliptical, but basically what he'll do is he'll hop on one of these and then try to keep his heart rate in what's called zone 2. If you want to know more about zone 2 training, I'll leave a link to a video in the description below. What's cool is that I'm also testing this VO2 max increasing protocol myself. I just had my baseline measurements done, and I'll be getting follow-up measurements done in a few months. So if you want to see if this protocol actually increases my VO2 max, make sure to subscribe. The final piece of Talmage's exercise protocol is his stretching routine. He follows a 5-day stretching protocol that looks like it's designed to take about 15 minutes a day. This is something that I've really fallen in love with over the past year. Stretching and focusing on flexibility every day has had a huge impact on my ability to recover. Altogether, I'm estimating that Talmage spends about an hour to an hour and a half on his exercise protocol every day. It seems like a pretty well-rounded approach to building a bit of muscle while maintaining cardio fitness and flexibility, which are all great for longevity. The second pillar to Talmage's approach to longevity is something that we all know is important, but we often overlook: sleep. Now, Talmage told me that his approach to getting good sleep is pretty much the exact same as his dad's. So if you want to see a really in-depth video on that, go check it out. But I figured that I would include a few principles that Bryan and Talmage use to make sure that they're getting the best sleep possible. 1, make sleep your #1 priority. 2, have a consistent bedtime. 3, create a wind down routine before bed. I think this one is especially helpful as it's really easy for me to go to bed with all these thoughts just running wild in my head, and then I kind of like have fever dreams of the stuff that's been happening throughout the day in my head all night. And that is like the most frustrating thing. 4, eat your last meal early. 5, avoid caffeine and other stimulants afternoon. 6, minimize exposure to light after sundown. 7, regulate your bedroom temperature. Something that really helps with this is a cooling mattress pad like 8 Sleep. 8, create a peaceful sleep environment. 9, get sunlight or bright light exposure within 15 minutes of waking up. And 10, track your sleep metrics and consistently try to improve them. Now, where Talmage and Bryan differ is that Talmage is currently spending about 8 months out of the year living in a college dorm room. Now, for those of you that lived in a college dorm room, you might remember that it's not necessarily the best place to get a great sleep score. And college makes it pretty hard to maintain a consistent bedtime.
Yeah, I think one of the most influential factors into maintaining those healthy habits is environment. whether it be the people you're around or the circumstances. And so it was a bit of a rough start at first, trying to figure out, how do I eat healthy foods? How do I avoid all of the unhealthy oils and sugars and things in the dining hall food that's just messing with my health? If I have homework, how not to stay up late. So it was a lot of trial and error. I would have friends, like if I was out past, like if I was in our hangout area around 8 p.m., 8:30, people would say, shouldn't you be in bed? And so it got to the point where that was the expectation, that I was someone who would go to bed early. So it felt good that despite being in that college environment, I finally reached a point where I could have stability. And I honestly think even though I didn't stay up late to do homework, or I guess do a lot of the things that people think you need for a human connection, I managed to manage my work well and make a lot of good friends in the process.
Something that I took away from speaking with Talmage is that even in less than ideal environments, it's possible to make the best of things. You can 100% decide to make sleep a priority and reap its benefits. Now that we've covered sleep, let's dive into the final power law of Talmage's longevity protocol, which is diet. I think one of the most fascinating aspects of the Blueprint protocol overall is diet. Bryan Johnson is kind of known for following an incredibly strict diet where every calorie is meticulously calculated and vetted. But there's a pretty big difference between his diet and Talmage's caloric intake.
The current Blueprint diet is at 2,250 calories, and I would probably lose weight on that diet.
Bryan practices caloric restriction. This is because there's really good animal studies showing that caloric restriction can help extend lifespan. So Bryan eats a total of about 2,250 calories a day and is in a 10% caloric deficit. So there's evidence showing that that's good for longevity. There's also evidence showing that building muscle is good for longevity. And it's well known that putting on muscle is a lot easier if you're under 30 years old.
I'm actually in a phase right now where I am trying to put on weight in a healthy manner and not doing a dirty bulk. And so if I'm going to do that, then I want to make sure that all my calories also have to fight for their lives and there's nothing bad in there. I'm currently at 3,300 calories a day.
So when I learned that Talmage consumes about 3,300 calories a day and is trying to build muscle, this made a lot of sense to me, because as a younger person, it's probably more optimal to focus on building muscle, at least until you're around that 30-year mark, instead of focusing on caloric restriction. Now, if you've been following Bryan for a while, then you'll notice that in the past, he would make reference to how his son would have chicken with super veggie, which is one of the Blueprint meals, but Talmage recently made the choice to go vegan.
Previously, I was making an alternative to super veggie, and I was putting chicken in there, and then I was putting quinoa, sweet potatoes, carrots, and now recently I've actually stopped eating the chicken. I am trying to see what it's like to be vegan. For me, the only thing that matters is health, and if that means having to take away a lot of the things that are seemingly delicious, then I'm okay with that.
Another variation between their diets is their eating windows. Bryan has an incredibly tight eating window where he consumes all of his calories in a 5 to 6 hour time period. Talmage's eating window is a little bit more expanded. It's still considered intermittent fasting, but he has about 8 hours to get in his 3,300 calories. And honestly, I'm really glad for that 8-hour eating window because I'm about to try Talmage's diet and I can't imagine eating 3,300 calories in 5 hours. So what does a day of eating like Talmage Johnson look like? Well, here was my experience. Right away in the morning, I drank longevity mix. Welcome to a day of eating like Talmage Johnson. It's currently 5:09 a.m. Longevity mix. Wow. I've had this before, but it's really good. It's a good way to start the day. This is one of Bryan Johnson's supplements or products, and to be honest, it's pretty good. After I got back from the gym, I had Talmage's version of nutty pudding. Okay, so it's 6:48 a.m. It's officially time for meal 2. Look how big this bowl is. This bowl is completely full. This is a ton of food. It's really good. It's got the Blueprint nutty pudding mix, chia seeds, berries, macadamia nuts, walnuts, collagen, banana, and I'm probably forgetting something, but it was pretty good. This meal comes in at 970 calories with 39 grams of fat, 132 grams of carbs, and 51 grams of protein. Next up, I prepared Talmage's chickpea curry. Right here, I've got this massive chickpea curry. And I mean, look at the size of this bowl. It's like literally the size of my head. This is a lot of food I've got to get through. Got an avocado. I've got some olive oil. I'm gonna do just a little shot of olive oil here with my lunch. It is currently 10:51 a.m. Okay, taste test. This is phenomenal. I seasoned it with some turmeric, some cumin, garlic powder, a bit of chili powder. It's really good. I'm normally not a huge fan of quinoa, but this is really, really good. Let's add a little bit of olive oil. Cheers. This has been meal 2. I'll see you guys for meal 3. This meal is loaded up with ingredients like macadamia nut milk, quinoa, garbanzo beans, spinach, tomato sauce. It's a pretty hearty and nutrient-dense meal coming in at 858 calories with 28 grams of fat, 140 grams of carbs, and 37 grams of protein. So I'm on a Zoom call really quick, but this is the third full meal of the day. It's currently 12:20, so I've got about 40 minutes to knock this down for the end of my eating window. I'm not hungry at all, and this is a lot of food, so wish me luck. For the final meal of the day, I tried Talmage's Omega Harvest. Now, this is a pretty simple and straightforward meal. It has only a few ingredients: beans, hemp seed, sweet potato, and avocado. This meal is about 854 calories and comes in at 34 grams of fat, 130 grams of carbs, and 36 grams of protein. So I ended up finishing all of the main meals in Talmage's diet. It's a lot of food. I can confidently say I do not want to eat anything else today. What's interesting though is that after finishing the last meal, I realized I was still shy some calories. I had about 2,700 calories with all of his main meals, and I still need to eat a little bit. And then what I realized is that he probably has the same 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil every day that Bryan does. I also noticed that those main meals only add up to around 120 grams of protein. So I'm guessing that he also has a protein shake to get him to his target of 160 grams of protein a day and to hit that 3,300 calorie mark. So I'm gonna have one more shot of olive oil, and then I'll drink about 40 grams of protein in a shake. Okay, to finish off the day, 1 shot of extra virgin olive oil. You know what, I'm gonna wrap up on that. This is about 40 grams of pea protein here. Chocolate flavored, so it's got a nice flavor to it. I'm so full. Okay, cheers. Well, that's been a day of eating like Talmage. It was almost like having a part-time job eating that volume of food. Overall, I've been really impressed with Talmage. It's not every day that you meet a 19-year-old that's so disciplined and committed to long-term health. In my experience, most people, especially people in college, are more focused on short-term pleasure, and they don't really seem to think about long-term wellness all that much. So massive props to Talmage for the hard work he's putting in. And if you made it this far in the video, props to you as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.